Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican 20 here. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest for the Lead Church of Christ and I teach theology. This is a podcast on the Star Christ Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 264, we're covering Ad Gentes 28-29, and each proclaims according to their gift. It's really just more 28 than 29. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican or frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday we spoke about missioning not just being an individual endeavor, but something you've done in groups, often communities, religious communities built around such a task. Today we're starting chapter 5, planning mission activity. And the summary of today is 28 is about we need to use our gifts, and 29 is about the Vatican needs to set up an office for missions. So let's read 28. It has two subparagraphs, but we'll read them together, and their summary is that we should each give our own gifts and appreciate others' gifts. So let's go. A. The Christian faithful having different gifts, confer Romans 12, according to each one's opportunity, ability, charisms, and ministry, confer 1 Corinthians 3, must all cooperate in the gospel. Hence, all alike, those who sow and those who reap, confer John 4, those who plant and those who irrigate must be one, confer 1 Corinthians 3, so that in a free and orderly fashion cooperating towards the same end, they may spend their forces harmoniously for the building up of the church. B. Wherefore the labors of the gospel heralds and the help given by the rest of the Christian faithful must be so directed and intertwined that all may be done in order, 1 Corinthians 14, in all fields of mission activity and cooperation. So here we note that each one has a gift to share the gospel, and each one should use those gifts to share the gospel, and those gifts are going to be different. We need to sow, we need to reap, but ultimately, what is it? Jesus harvests. Jesus is the one who harvests. And in this sowing, reaping, doing different activities in different fields, we all need to also work together in coordination of fraternal charity and see the gifts of others. Because I have my gifts, others have their gifts. I am not a great singer. I appreciate when you have a beautiful singer who proclaims the gospel through song. Don't ask me to do it. You want to hear me sing? No, you don't. You do not want to hear me sing. It's de-edifying. So, moving on to 29. 29 is the majority here. It is 7 paragraphs, and it's mainly about a Vatican office on missions, which was called Propaganda Fide at the time, the propagation of faith, but is now called the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples. So this is really about a Vatican office, congregation, dicastery, whatever you want to call it. Now they're all called congregations. That is about missions. So A to B is about setting that office up. C, the Vatican office should promote vocations and oversee missions. D and E, they should work with non-Catholic Christians and make missions more effective. F and G, the Vatican office should have wide representation and look at specific areas of concern. So let's go straight to 29A and B. A, since the charge of proclaiming the gospel in the whole world falls primarily on the body of bishops, the Synod of Bishops, or that stable council of bishops for the entire church, among the affairs of general concern, should give special consideration to mission activity, which is the greatest and holiest task of the church. B, for all missions and for the whole mission activity, there should be only one competent office, namely that of the propagation of the faith, which should direct and coordinate throughout the whole world both missionary work itself and missionary cooperation. However, the law of the Oriental churches is to remain untouched. So we see this in B here. It's really setting up this office or continuing this office, propagation of faith, that it's really going to do a whole lot to establish it. As you know, it's propagation of faith. As the old name, it has a new name. And so this is the idea of building up. And also the idea that in the Synod of Bishops, which is talked about back, I think, Christus Dominus to the bishops and things like that, where we have these kind of regular meetings of bishops, some of those should be on missions because that's an important thing. And that's what we had in John Paul II's time. They had all these ones on different areas of the world, in the Americas, in Europe. How are we going to evangelize these different regions of the world? Because the ultimate goal is that everybody comes to know and love Jesus Christ in every corner of the world. And then lastly, just to leave here they use the word Oriental or Eastern. Oriental is just a fancy word for saying Eastern. And all those Eastern rites, the Maronites, the Ukrainian Catholics, etc., and leave them not to push them into evangelizing outside their kind of area. Hopefully they should still evangelize, but mainly in their area or those regions surrounding it, because that is the kind of cultural milieu in which they seem to be established and most helpful. So moving on to 29C, talks about the Vatican Office promoting vocation overseeing missions. We really need to promote vocations to the missionary life. I would definitely encourage anybody who's thinking about it to explore that vocation. So let's read it. C. Although the Holy Spirit in diverse manners arouses the mission spirit in the Church of God and oftentimes anticipates the action of those whose task it is to rule the life of the Church, yet for its part, this office should promote missionary vocation and missionary spirituality, zeal, and prayer for the missions, and should have put out authentic and adequate reports about them. Let it raise up missionaries and distribute them according to the more urgent needs of various areas. Let it arrange for an orderly plan of action, issue directives and principles adapt to the evangelization, and give the impetus. Let it take care of stimulating and coordinating an effective collection of funds, which should be distributed according to reasons of necessity and usefulness, the extent of territory in question, the number of believers and non-believers, of undertakings and institutions, of missions, of ministers and missionaries. So this one is a little long, but it is really setting forward the goals of this propagation of faith as the Vatican Office. So it needs to promote missionary vocation and missionary zeal. This is something we really need to do as a church. I think in the U.S. this has really fallen off in the past years. We saw a great push for doing a lot of missions in the past, and we don't see a great push for that now. We Catholics in the United States are so blessed with so many priests. You might think there's a shortage, but look at other parts of the world. There's much more of a shortage in many other parts of the world. That we need to be ready to send people on missions, both priests and religious and laity. Many of us need to be ready. Now, not every single person is going to go on missions, but we need to promote that missionary zeal, that missionary sense in our church. And so that's the important part. The second thing is to keep us informed of missions. I wish I would hear more about like the missionary success of the church, the development of, a church is now being established, and the whole history of it. One of the things that I would love to hear, I haven't heard it, but like when a new church is established, as now we're no longer a mission church and now it's an established church, if the Vatican would publish a great book telling the whole history of it, of the last 100, 200, 400 years, because I think that would be very inspiring for a lot of people. And I'd read some of those. That would be very interesting. And then it needs to coordinate missions, help plan them out. One of the things about missions is that a lot of religious communities are assigned certain areas because you'll have different religious communities who are set on missions. There's different mission areas that are available. And as a coordination thing, the Vatican has to say, okay, you white fathers go to this country, and you, the Congregation for Mission, or the Pontifical Institute for Missions, or whatever kind of group, go to this place. And you, the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, go to this place. And things like that, because there is a certain degree of making sure we don't send 5 different communities to one country and then none to the country next door or something like that, right? And so that's important. And finally, it talks about contributing and just collecting and distributing funds for missions, which is very important. That talks about a whole bunch of factors to weigh it in, so it's not kind of a simple formula, and it's not even really a formula. It's more of like an art at that point and not just a science. So moving on to the next one's D and E, the need to work with non-Catholic Christians and make missions more effective. So let's read it. D, in coordination with the Secretary for Promoting Christian Unity, let it search out ways and means for bringing about and directing fraternal cooperation, as well as harmonious living, with missionary undertaking of other Christian communities, that as far as possible the scandal and division may be removed. E, therefore, this office must be both an instrument of administration and an organ of dynamic direction, which makes use of scientific methods and means suited to the conditions of modern times, always taking into consideration present-day research in matters of theology and methodology and missionary pastoral procedure. One of the things here, talking about scientific methods, is not necessarily science in the sense of going into physics, chemistry, and things like that. Scientific is also a way to describe a way of research, even in things like humanities. Like when I write an academic article, it has to follow science. It has to be a scientific paper. And here, scientific, I think, and refers to that kind of method of how we study it to find the good results. So we study it with that degree of rigor. So there is this scandal when we have Christians who are fighting more amongst themselves than really to get new converts, and especially in a missionary. And so there is this idea of coordinating with other Christians, so we're not just poaching other Christians. Now, obviously, the closer another church is to the Catholic Church, the more this is possible. And the more this is likely, also in the sense of like, we have these national churches, these Orthodox churches, and although we can let people join the Catholic Church, there's a lot of times things like that, like an ecumenism of rejoining of the Greek Orthodox and the Catholics might be a more effective method to bring all the all the people of Greece in union than by sending Catholic missionaries to try and convert Greek Orthodox believers, right? And things like that. So those are the kind of questions we have to look at there with the other Christians. And then we also need new methods, look at them in that scientific investigation. We need to share new methods. Ultimately, this is looking for more evangelization, looking for more people to come to know, love, and serve Jesus. People think of Vatican II as like, oh, no more mission. No, it's exactly the opposite. Say, hey, let's find out ways to do better missions. Let's find out ways to reach more people. That is one of the things that grinds my gear about people when they talk about Vatican II and they say, oh, no more missions. No, it's just the opposite. You read this document, Ad Gentes, and it's all about, let's go do missions. Let's go and spread the word. Let's bring more people to know Jesus. That's really important. And obviously, sometimes you need to go and say, okay, let's look at different methods. Let's investigate them with their scientific rigor and find which is better so we can apply it to a whole bunch of mission fields. That's valuable because then we don't have priests and religious sisters and lay people out there banging their head into a wall, not doing something effective. So moving on to the last two subparagraphs, F and G, is talking about the Vatican office should have wide representation and look at specific areas of mission. So let's read F, and then G is like 1.5 lines. F, in the direction of this office, an active role with a deliberate vote should be had by selected representatives of all those who cooperate in missionary work. That is, the bishops of the whole world. The Episcopal Conference should be heard from in this regard, as well as the moderators of pontifical institutes and works, in ways and under conditions to be fixed by the Roman Pontiff. All these, being called together at stated times, will exercise supreme control of all mission work under the authority of the Supreme Pontiff. This office should have available a permanent group of expert consultants of proven knowledge and experience, whose duty will be, among other things, to gather pertinent information about local conditions in various regions, and about thinking of various groups of men, as well as the means of evangelization to be used. They will then propose scientifically based conclusions for missionary work and cooperation. G. Institutes of religious women, regional undertakings for the mission cause, and organization of laymen, especially international ones, should be suitably represented. So what this is talking about is how this office is going to be managed. So first of all, the deliberative vote, the ones who have actual governments, who have supreme control other than the Pope, are the bishops and the moderators of what they call pontifical institutes and works. So this would be things like the Pontifical Institute for Missions, or a religious congregation that's dedicated to missions, whether it's male or female, clerical or lay, because there are institutes of just religious brothers for men. It's not as common as clerical men's congregations. We may have men and priests and brothers, and then religious women. But to have all of them who have that moderator, meaning, and a pontifical institute of work is one that has reached a certain size that have received a pontifical approval. So if you have a small community of, say, 10 sisters in your diocese, it's not going to be a pontifical one. Maybe even 100 sisters isn't. But if you look at the main communities you see all across North America and across multiple continents, all of those are pontifical ones. Exactly when it is, the Pope and the Vatican can approve certain ones at certain stages, and the exact size before they were approved varies a little bit, but that's the idea of what we mean by pontifical there. It's the larger, more established ones. And then also have this permanent office with experts who do this scientific investigation. Same meaning of scientific I talked about in the last paragraph. And this idea that when they do reports, they investigate missiology, they investigate how we can reach certain people, because you're going to have experts who are experts in certain areas of mission or experts in certain cultural aspects of certain groups of people that we are missioning to. And that's important. And then obviously we need to include all the groups, lay missionary organizations, female religious, large regional undertakings, like if there's a big group of missionaries in Thailand or something like that, well, what are we doing about them and how are they represented? Things like that. So that concludes today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. I do this podcast on a volunteer basis, and my own local religious community relies on donations to pay our bills. If you want to support my community, you can go to patreon.com/frmatthewlc. There's also a link to that and to a one-time donation on my own website, frmatthewlc.com. You can also donate to support StarQuest at sqpn.com/give. Tomorrow we're going to continue with the next paragraphs of Ad Gentes, paragraphs 30 and 31 on missionaries of one heart and soul. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which can provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. Go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X for more information on the podcast, such as playlists for individual documents and a reading plan.
Amen.